With each iteration of Halo that releases, it seems like the art direction and graphical style behind every new game is typically quite a bit different than previous entries. And when we look at the Halo design philosophy when it comes to having a heads-up display or a HUD, whenever it comes to a specific Halo game, it seems like it could either have a very similar HUD to a previous game or a drastically different design to a previous Halo game. So today we wanted to take a look at all of the HUDs from the main Halo games and maybe try to put a rank together from worst to best. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, starting this list off, if we're going to start at the bottom of the barrel, we wanted to talk a little bit about the Halo 4 HUD. This is the HUD that actually inspired the making of this video in the first place, just because there is so much going on. And in 343's defense, we understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to make the helmet feel as immersive as ever. However, in doing this and adding a lot of the features they thought would be great in the Halo 4 HUD, it ended up making it feel very claustrophobic at times. Besides just having the regular features you would see in the HUD, like your health, your ammo, your weapon, and whatnot, this game has a lot going on as far as the Visor tech lines, which are these soft lines that are on the screen to kind of make it feel like you're in this high-tech helmet. And then there's also these hard helmet borders, which essentially make it feel like you're actually inside the helmet that you're wearing. Now, this is of course worse in campaign because they're trying to make you feel like you're in Master Chief's helmet, so the visibility actually ends up getting sacrificed a little bit more in the campaign than the multiplayer here. And besides just having all of these visibility things popping up, having these Visor tech lines that are these soft blue lines going across the screen and just kind of blocking a little more visibility is something that when we're trying to pick through our favorite and least favorite HUDs, it definitely becomes one of those things that will usually annoy us more so than being something we want to praise. Also, with the Halo 4 Visor, there's a bunch of random words and letters that are scattered across the screen, things that you really can't read unless you get real close up to your TV. And while it's supposed to be like, oh, look at these meters and gauges that Master Chief has access to, the fact that we can't even read them makes us wonder why they're there in the first place. Also, whenever a character pops up in like a video chat call on the side of your screen while you're trying to play through a game, it's kind of annoying too. On the bright side though, while we have a lot to criticize about the Halo 4 HUD, 343 did take into consideration a lot of the things that maybe were criticized a bit more in Halo 4. Also, we're not going to talk about Forge mode too much, but we did want to include this while we're talking about Halo 4, that the Forge mode of Halo 4 also sacrificed a lot of visibility in the sake of trying to make players feel immersed in being one of the monitors for Forge mode. We really weren't a fan of this. It wasn't really something that was necessary, but moving forward after Halo 4, they cleaned up a lot of the Forge visuals and visibilities, and that's something we appreciate. But oh my god, was Halo 4 Forge just a pain to even look around in. And they worked on it throughout the iterations of Halo that they would release later on. So it was really cool to see some ideas that were maybe not executed as well be cleaned up on a little bit going forward. When Halo 5 Guardians came out, the Visor tech lines are still pretty thick and we're not really fans of it here. And of course, the campaign again went with the helmet visor philosophy where you should be able to see part of your helmet. The multiplayer definitely did clean up a lot of these elements that we were really not fond of with Halo 4's visor. Everything looks a lot sleeker, but of course those visor tech lines still do bother us quite a bit. One really interesting fact about Halo 5 Guardians though is when you're playing through the campaign, each character from the cast of 8 different characters you can play as has their own helmet with their own visor, which is a really unique aspect of Halo 5, and it kind of makes us wish that on the multiplayer side of things we would have been able to customize how our own HUD would look based off of what we want to know whenever we're playing. That'd be something really cool that they could implement in the future and maybe a future Halo game, and we would really like to see that become a real thing. Going to Halo 2 Anniversary, this game that technically came out between 4 and 5, while this game was built on Halo 4, it did seem to pay a lot of attention to cleaning up the visor tech lines from Halo 4, and the opacity is actually much lower, so they're not really in your face as much as what you would see if you were playing through Halo 4. But the odd thing is here, while Halo 2 Anniversary was of course built on Halo 4, the HUD does look more like a Halo 4 HUD than a Halo 2 HUD, and since we really do like the way Halo 2's HUD looks, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, it did feel like there was still something missing with Halo 2 Anniversary's HUD that we would have liked to see a little more. Maybe it still feels a little too tight and together and not enough balance in the way that it looks. Okay, I thought I was originally going to put Halo 3 way up towards the top of this list. However, when we were looking through the criteria that we wanted to talk about when picking through these helmets, I kind of realized relatively quickly that maybe Halo 3 wasn't as glorious as I initially remembered, even though it wasn't bad by any means either. This is actually the first game to introduce those visor tech lines once again to try to build up the immersion, but for the most part they actually blend in well and actually serve a purpose of attempting to make some of the weapon and grenade icons a little easier to see when looking in areas with similar colors, even though it doesn't always work the right way. Still, we're not a fan of these lines and colorations over the visor, just as it's something that obstructs visibility unnecessarily. But at the same time, while I'm kind of dinging the Halo 3 HUD here for those lines, I actually didn't even remember that they were in the game until I specifically started looking for them for the sake of this video. So I kind of have to also keep that in mind. It wasn't like Halo 4 where I had this strong recollection of being annoyed with the visor. On the other hand, there is an alternate visor for an elite player, which is really cool because it's about the same as the typical one, though the lines have a slightly different pattern, and it was cool to see a little distinguishing feature here that a lot of people don't really pay attention to. Now, ODST in my original draft was the top of the top when it came to HUDs, but taking some time to really study these, we kind of realized that maybe it shouldn't take the win on all of the Halo HUDs. Sure, with the ODST helmet, immersion was very important, especially for the atmosphere of ODST, with it being so unique. This time, the HUD goes for a yellow aesthetic, which is something we really like. We think it plays into the atmosphere, the feeling of not being a Spartan and being an ODST instead, though with all of the tech lines and graphics that are on the screen, it does obscure your vision a little bit more than we would like, especially when you activate night vision mode. Another section of your screen gets kind of obscured for the sake of adding in a little light effect. But honestly, if I could design my own HUD in Halo Infinite and pick any HUD to wear, I probably would choose the ODST HUD because I really love the coloration it has, and I think the way that the compass is incorporated into the health bar is really unique, and we are huge fans of the way that the ODST helmet looks. This next one actually is a 343 HUD, and we're proud to actually be able to say that 343 made some awesome progress between Halo 5 Guardians and Halo Infinite, at least from what we've seen from the tech demo so far. The visor HUD that we see is really simple and clean. There's barely any tech lines, which is nice and almost allow for complete immersion in the way that we would really support. And while the shield recharge thing is kind of now a part of the HUD, and we're not the biggest fans of that, and objectives will pop up on the screen from time to time but then go away, we overall think that it's a pretty simple and clean design. It's just for once you're able to experience Halo and just feel like you're in the world of Halo by experiencing it and not trying to have some artificial tech in your face to make you feel like you're experiencing it through a helmet, if that makes any sense at all. Now, this is probably nitpicking here. I actually wish the gun icon on this HUD was in the top right for some reason. It's probably because the grenades and equipment seem to be combined into this little gun section, and typically in Halo games I like the gun info on the top right, which might be a little hypocritical because in ODST it's actually in the bottom right, but since ODST didn't have a radar, I felt like it worked by having the grenades and the guns on the bottom. This is definitely nitpicking, but if I had to point out like one minor improvement to make, that would be the little thing I would love to be able to adjust on my own. Now we move into the top 3 HUDs when it comes to Halo. Halo Combat Evolved is great. It is a clean and simple HUD. We don't have to worry about tech lines. This was the HUD that started it all. It just dropped us in the world, gave us a couple of little tech-like graphics in the way that the health bar looked, and that's all we needed. We were just let loose in Halo and we could go and experience the game. And that's why we praised Halo Infinite for kind of giving us that same clarity, and Halo CE set the bar with this. The health is maybe a little bit weird to read, and the bar obviously would go through some better iterations in the future, but for the most part, Halo CE worked. Halo 2, on the other hand, has another great and clean HUD with no tech lines, and of course, the fact that they moved the health bar and made it easier to understand and read and put it next to the radar was really helpful. Halo 2 also introduced the alternate HUD mode by having the Arbiter's HUD being purple, and they had a little circle that would tell you how much time you had left on the Arbiter's invisibility, which was really cool. Though the one main thing keeping Halo 2 from kind of being the best HUD that we think there was in Halo is still that health bar could be a little bit better, and we think ultimately we like to see the health bar at the top of the screen in the way that maybe Halo 3 does it, or Halo Infinite will do it, and that would be kind of the one thing to look for. Which brings us to number 1 on our list, Halo Reach. Reach. Yes, I honestly did not expect to like Halo Reach's HUD as much as I did when I was going through these different HUDs. I hadn't even pictured it very high on my list originally, but when I start to think of the things that would be important to me, or when Luke and I were talking about what he would think would look good in a Halo HUD, a lot of the things kind of landed on what Halo Reach has done right. First of all, there's no tech lines. However, if you look at a lot of the elements of the HUD, there is a slight curvature in the way that they're placed, which still gives the illusion of these things popping up on your visor. It's a really interesting trick to keep that same idea of immersion that has worked in the other Halo games, or the idea and philosophy that they've tried to implement in later Halo games, without having to put stuff on the screen that's going to kind of block some of your visibility. The compass from Odst is there and it works really well, and everything else is just neat, simple, and easy to understand. Also, the Elite variation is really cool because they did some little things to make it also feel foreign, like you are playing as an alien species. Specifically, if you look at the compass, obviously Elites wouldn't be using the English compass system, so instead they put a bunch of alien letters in there, but they give you arrows so you still can understand what direction you're going to. And that's just a little attention to detail that we really appreciated. And for these reasons is why we think Reach is kind of the pinnacle when it comes to HUDs across the Halo games. Now, a good HUD, of course, doesn't make or break a game, but definitely can help in how people perceive gameplay and how they experience the game based off of when a HUD crosses the line from being helpful to maybe being annoying. And that's something we thought was really interesting, and that's why we wanted to talk about it today. But this is, of course, our opinions, so we'd like to know what you guys think. So make sure you leave a comment with what your thoughts are when it comes down to these HUDs from the Halo games. But hey, after all of that, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos just like this one, and you won't miss anything we upload, even if YouTube's acting all whack. Also, if you want to, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Rocket Elijah, or you can follow Luke at Rocket Sloth Luke. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time with a brand new video. Bye, guys.